It's time to have your say. Welcome back to the Q&A, answering your questions in the wrestling community here for another episode of Ask SCW. We'll begin straight after this. It's been another big week in the world of wrestling, and we're answering your questions today on WWE, AEW. We've got the ROH invasion of Impact Wrestling and much, much more. So if you want to be involved on the next episode of Ask SCW and I can answer your question and give you a shout out, then drop a comment here on YouTube, give that question, leave the hashtag AskSCW. I know then to include it in the next episode, or you can follow me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. All should go on the screen right about now. But without further ado, let's get on with our first question this week, which comes from Maxwell J. Freeman. Maybe he's better than you, and you know it. Johnny Gargano to debut in AEW at Beach Break this Wednesday on Dynamite. Who would you have him feud with if he does show up? 1. Adam Cole, or 2. Bryan Danielson? 2 just jumps at Maxwell. Bryan Danielson more, as we've never seen them in the ring together and have similar fan support. Great question to kick things off there for us here on Ask SCW. And I've got to say, I do think that Johnny Gargano will debut this Wednesday at Beach Break in AEW. Remember, he had that t-shirt that was on sale for 2 weeks only. Could he be going to AEW? Would he debut in the Royal Rumble? Maybe he's going to go back to NXT, who knows? But I tell you what, if I had to put a prediction here and now, I do think he's going to go to All Elite Wrestling. And what great 2 contenders that he could go there. If I had to pick one of those 2, then yes, the dream match for me is Bryan Danielson. Like you say, similar fan support. Yeah, they've probably wrestled together on the Indies previously, but I personally haven't seen them in the ring together. It'd be many years since they have shared a ring together if they have previously. So for me, this would tick a lot of boxes. It would have that NXT takeover vibe about it, wouldn't it? Because Bryan Danielson, no strange to these long matches. Johnny Gargano would be completely the same. Adam Cole would be a great opponent as well, don't get me wrong. But the thing is with Adam Cole, like you said, we've seen it before on multiple takeovers in NXT. Yes, not in AEW history. Could be done very differently, but I think Adam Cole as well is going to be going for the AEW World Championship against Hangman Adam Page at Revolution. I do think that Hangman and Lance Archer will wrap up soonish, because for me, that feud does absolutely nothing for anybody at this point, if I'm being brutally honest. And I do think even though Bryan Danielson against Jon Moxley looks like a potential direction in the future, for me, I don't want to wait for Gargano versus Danielson, and I don't think that AEW and Tony Khan would make us wait too long either. If I was to just quickly give an answer of who I'd go originally on the roster, I personally would go for Johnny Gargano to go for the winner of the TNT ladder match. Of course, we've got Cody against Sammy Guevara. It's taking place at Beach Break as well. I'd have, say for example, it's Cody or Sammy, doesn't really matter which, holds that title up at the end, saying that they're going to take on all challengers, all comers, and then Johnny Wrestling's music hits. I think that would be a pretty epic way for him to debut. So that's how I personally would bring him in, but of the 2 choices given, both would be epic, and yeah, Bryan Danielson, I need to see it, Tony Khan. Book it for me as soon as possible, please. Next question comes from It's My Wrestling Podcast. Regarding Jon Moxley's promo, where do you stand? Should he apologise? Should the fan have been kicked out? The people who were immigrated, how do you think they would have coped with the mid-90s? Really great question, this one, and it really kind of depends what side of the fence you come from. Obviously, I'm a very long-term fan, so obviously probably not as offended as easily by perhaps Jon Moxley swearing on a promo or being away for 3 months. Look, if he needs to take his time away, he takes his time away. I'm just glad to see him healthy and see him back in a wrestling ring and hopefully doing what he loves again. And like I say, he looks 10 years younger, so I'm very pleased to see Jon Moxley back. And that promo that was done on Dynamite for me was near on perfection. The only thing that stopped it from being perfection, yeah, was that opening beginning moment. The fact that the fan shouted that out, and we obviously got the profanity swearing from Jon Moxley on the mic. Should anyone be ejected for it? Probably not. Let's be fair, it was annoying, it wasn't great, but hey, like you say, in the mid-90s, a lot worse would have been called out. The thing from Jon Moxley, hey, he bit back. Should he have sworn like that? Probably not. But again, does it warrant an apology? Unless TV networks have got an issue with it, then I would just move swiftly on. But for me, I'm pleased to see Jon Moxley back, doing what he does best. Like I say, he looks great. He had a great match as well back with Ethan Page on Rampage. I love the way the commentary also styled that out, how he lost weight, how he may have to adjust his style, and obviously with the stare down then with Moxley and Bryan Danielson, which I think probably will be the direction going into Revolution. So let's see how it's going to play out. But for me, I'm just pleased to see Moxley back, and apologies, not for me. Moving on to WWE now, the next question comes from the Kid, Mikey Wilkes. If Seth Rollins and or Bobby Lashley lose their title match, who would you prefer to see win the Rumble match? Great question, this one. To be honest with you, I'd be happy to see either of them win the Royal Rumble match, should either of them lose their championship matches. But I suppose when I look at it, in a way, I would prefer Seth, because I think Seth would be good for winning the championship. But I think Seth could win the championship now and take it to Raw. I think that would kind of make more sense. Bobby Lashley, for me, I'm not sure if he's going through this tweener stage or what's going on. He was kind of going through a transition to babyface at the turn of the year, going into day one. I'm not quite sure now what the direction is now. We're sort of in this feud with Brock Lesnar, but perhaps if they're going to continue with that, maybe Bobby Lashley would make more sense to win the Royal Rumble and win the title of, say, Seth Rollins at WrestleMania in a babyface role. I think that's the sort of dynamic we need heading into WrestleMania. So perhaps Bobby Lashley, but of the two of a preferable, I do want to see Seth going for the championship. So I guess it's kind of what way it's done and how it's booked and who wins and loses what matches at the Royal Rumble this Saturday. Next question comes from FAF Wrestling. If you had to choose 3 potential surprise entrants in the men's Royal Rumble, who would you pick? And keep up the great work with your videos. Thank you for the kind words as always, FAF Wrestling. I really do appreciate the support. As for the surprise entrance in the Royal Rumble, I sort of did a video just recently about potential surprise entrants and returns at the Royal Rumble. It's been on the channel now for around a week now, but do recommend going and checking that out if you haven't already. But if I got to pick 3 for the men's Royal Rumble of my personal choosing, because I was rating the chances of them in that video, if it was my choice, first off, I would go with Chris Jericho. Now, I know he's AEW, but if that Forbidden Door could be opened, how awesome would that be to see Chris Jericho in the Royal Rumble match? He's obviously been good on both sides for many, many years. So, and of course with the Broken Skull stuff last year after WrestleMania being on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast that was aired on the WWE Network and Peacock, for me, I think it'd be really, really cool to see go down. So that would be one, if I could choose, I would make happen. I think it would create headlines, which is something Chris Jericho is all about. Second off, I go with Braun Strowman. I just think he's a big name that WWE could bring back in, even for a one-night basis. I think he would bring legitimacy to the Royal Rumble. I think the men's match is lacking some star names, in my personal opinion, this year. I don't have the same hype for the men's Rumble, even though it seems a much more open field. I'm much more excited currently about the women's Royal Rumble match. And last but not least, I would go with a surprise entrant, perhaps from, say, the Attitude Era. Let's go Gangrel, just because that Brood music is being used a bit more frequently of late, and let's be fair, that entrance is badass. To see Gangrel have a cameo for, say, 3 to 5 minutes, I think would be pretty special, and I think a lot of fans would really, really dig it. Next, and I believe for the first time on AskSCW, is Amber Audio. Thank you very much for your question, also for getting involved. Saying, if this leak is real, I 100% call Moose being an Impact star in the men's Royal Rumble. So yeah, more of a statement, I guess, rather than a question. But yeah, there has been a leak that's been going around online. And yes, I'm not talking about the one where Veer Mahan enters at number 1 and eliminates every single person. There is a leak of a Royal Rumble match online, which I'm assuming is fake, but it does have Moose as a surprise entrant. We talked about surprises in the last question. If Moose was to come in from Impact Wrestling, that would be pretty awesome. And I do think there is a chance that that could actually happen. But still, let's look at the leak and see if we feel it's legit or not. And first off, as I call it on the screen, it looks a little bit like the paper's not the clearest, so that makes me feel it's probably a bit fake anyway. But looking at it, I mean, we've got AJ Styles sort of winning the match there from the number 25 position. I think that could seem quite legit. We've got Roman Reigns that would sort of take the number 30 spot if he was to lose his title earlier in the evening. I could see that being a spot that could go down. But we have got, if you look at the likes here of Alberto Del Rio as a surprise entrant, not so sure about that. Santino Marella has been one that's been in the Rumble previously as well, but again, I don't know. Tommaso Ciampa, Pete Dunne have been doing some, dark matches before SmackDown and have also been on main events, so there is a chance both could be in the Royal Rumble match. But also, you look at the idea there with Omos being eliminated by Riddle and Randy Orton. Is that enough for 2 of them to get Omos out of the match? I'm not sure. Usually the big guys take more people to get rid of them, so we'll have to see how it will play out. But this certainly, it looks plausible in places, but I suppose if you look at the times as well, it's quite a lengthy Royal Rumble match here. I mean, AJ Styles getting in there 25 minutes from the number 25 spot. Again, not so sure if that would be a legit feeling or not, but we've got some Kevin Owens and Big E as well being in the match early, and we're lasting long as well. So yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how it would play out, but personally, if you were to ask me, I'm not sure if that is legit or not, mainly from the surprise entrance. I'm not sure if I would ever see Alberto Del Rio in a WWE ring again. Personally, think it's a bad decision if they do bring him in. But looking at this, 50-50, but I mean, Moose coming in for the Forbidden Door, if you want, that would create shockwaves. We've got it with Mickie James. Perhaps it is a one-off with just Mickie in the women's. Does it take away the gloss from that if we get it in the men's as well? I'm not sure. It's something perhaps you should let me know in the comments below if you think this is legit or fake. Personally, for me, I do think it's a fake. I do think WWE will do something different with it, but hey, we'll have to see how it's going to pan out. Next question now coming from Steve Silk for us now, and says, why are we seeing Edge in feuds against The Miz? We saw this back in 2011. Why can't we get Edge versus AJ Styles, Damian Priest, Kevin Owens, Ricochet, people he's never wrestled before? I'm sure some of those guys would greatly benefit from being in the ring with a Hall of Famer. And I completely agree. I want to see all of those matches take place. And I do think, like you say, sharing the ring with someone with a wealth of experience of an Edge, someone who's been there main eventing WrestleMania's multi-time world champion, these guys could do with that rub being in the ring with Edge. Totally agree with all that. Here's my feeling though. Perhaps AJ Styles is not perhaps as neat, but still it's a dream match in itself. But here's my stance of why we've got this feud currently going on. It's not really much about The Miz. It's more the fact that we've got Edge and Beth Phoenix as a team going in at the Royal Rumble to take on Miz and Maurice. It's the fact that Edge, gets to be, in a partnership with his wife, which he's never got to do in his career before. This is clearly something on the bucket list that these two want to do together, having that sort of, mixed tag team match on a big pay-per-view and picking up the dub. Because let's be fair, yes, it could be against another couple instead. Perhaps a Seth Rollins and a Becky Lynch would be quite interesting to see, but I think it would make more sense for Becky and Seth then to go over in that feud. It makes more sense in this sort of scenario here that Edge and Beth Phoenix would get the W, won't harm The Miz in defeat as well, Maurice either. So I think that's the reason this is being done. I think it will finish after the Royal Rumble. I don't expect it to go past this event. So for that reason, I think that's why we're seeing it. It's something that I think is more of an Edge call and means more to him and Beth Phoenix than perhaps what it does to maybe a number of the fan base who are not really interested in this feud. But do expect a number of those matches probably to take place later in this year. I do expect for sure that we will get Edge versus AJ Styles and Edge versus Kevin Owens as two meaningful feuds going into 2022. Next question comes from Lorenzo Carrillo. With all the 2021 WWE releases and the draft, it seems that SmackDown is heavily lacking top stars at the moment, and with Seth being from Raw challenging Roman at the Royal Rumble, how do you fix the lack of main eventers on SmackDown and make it watchable once again moving forward? And let's not forget injuries as well there. Of course, Drew McIntyre being out, Sasha Banks currently being out as well. It's not really done a favour for the Blue brand. And like you say, the releases, of course, we've had Hit Row go, Toni Storm requested her release. It's kind of WWE's idea at the moment, I think, is the quick fix, putting Seth on SmackDown. We got Kevin Owens as well last week, Big E, and Big E will be back there once again this week. They're taking some of Raw's top stars and saying, well, it's Royal Rumble season, we'll get away with it that way. But they can't do it all the way through. I mean, if they do it all the way to WrestleMania, then, what's the point of the brand split? It doesn't really make sense to keep it going, does it? So I think the thing to do is to perhaps try and make more sense of the championship picture coming out after the Royal Rumble. Hopefully, Drew McIntyre will not be away so long, neither will Sasha Banks. If Bayley returns, maybe you put her on SmackDown rather than putting her on Raw. Puts a lot of strength in that women's division. And of course, if Roman drops his title to Seth or retains it, get Brock Lesnar back onto SmackDown as well. And all of a sudden, those sort of top tier guys, it fills out the roster a bit more. You're not kind of lacking as much as what you were. I think SmackDown's just been very unlucky with the injuries in the last number of weeks. But of course, the releases and stuff like that and the draft itself probably didn't help SmackDown's cause, but certainly a call-up could always be helpful as well. We've mentioned already earlier in this video the likes of Tommaso Ciampa, Pete Dunne could be on the verge of a call-up. Roderick Strong apparently was also in the dark match on SmackDown last week. Also, I believe LA Knight even was another one of those, so there could be some of those guys that could be coming up. And let's not forget as well, Raquel Gonzalez I think could be set to be coming up anytime soon as well. Io Shirai as well is another one that's primed and ready. So there are people from NXT that could be taken up, putting onto SmackDown as well, definitely would freshen things up. So there's another different variables of what they can do, but it looks like for the quick fix, certainly up until this Saturday, they've gone with taking some Raw stars over, which I think, if it is just for a couple of weeks, I think does make sense going into Rumble season. But long term, you either go with the NXT call-ups or hope those injuries are not as bad as first feared. Wrestling by Waldridge, our next question now. Who do you think will be challenging for the 4 world titles at WrestleMania this year? Now that's a big question, isn't it? That's kind of saying, where do we see things going at the Royal Rumble? Which I must admit, this Saturday, I'm still not overly convinced of what way it's going to go with the Roman and Brock title defenses. Do we still get that title unification match or do we not? Here's the thing, I think one of them is losing their titles. I'm just not sure currently which way around it is. So for that, I'm just going to go that Roman and Brock will have one match on WrestleMania. And I'm going to stick my neck out and say that Seth and Big E will have the other. There is a potential Lashley could be in that spot instead of Big E. And there is also a chance as well that Kevin Owens could be added to a Big E versus Seth match because we have the Seth and Kevin Owens storyline going on. I wouldn't be surprised if they got into the tag team title picture on the road to WrestleMania either, but I do think that could be certainly how the men's direction is going. So Roman and Brock one side, Big E and Seth on another, with KO perhaps lurking in the background either as an assister for Seth or in there as a triple threat. As for the women's championship matches, the belief for me is that Sasha Banks, when she returns, will go against Charlotte Flair. And on the Raw side, for me personally, if Bayley is good to go, I'd love to see Bayley versus Becky Lynch. But I think story term wise, I think we are looking at Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch. Again, as what I suggested in a video that I did just recently as well, I'd also be down for the triple threat because if Bayley can return, Bayley hasn't got to go to natural babyface. She can play the tweener role and you can let the natural storyline with Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch play out, as well as a conclusion for the Bianca Belair and Bayley storyline, something that was going on before Bayley was written off for TV due to injury. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Next question coming from Mike, a Tanhabs Mike, asking, I think that Roman Reigns should only lose the Universal title to Drew McIntyre, even if it's at SummerSlam. Everything depends on how serious a McIntyre's injury is. When it happens, the moment needs to be huge. Do you agree? Simply, yes, I do agree. I think the moment needs to be huge. I think it needs to be big. I think it needs to be a standout. For people that have watched this channel for a long time would know that I have said previously, I think Drew McIntyre is the right person to dethrone Roman Reigns, but it does, like you say, depend on how long the injury is. If it can be out short term and come back and then build up in the summer, that would be great. But if it's going to be something that's going to be long term, the plans evidently will change. And have they already changed? Is probably the devil's advocate answer I'm going to give you here, because Roman Reigns was scheduled to face Brock Lesnar at day one. Now, Brock Lesnar is a world champion right now. They're looking to perhaps address what they're going to do with the storylines after the Royal Rumble. Perhaps Sunday's going to fix what was supposed to happen at day one. Was Brock Lesnar meant to have already ended the Universal Championship run of Roman Reigns? I think there's a belief perhaps it may have been that Brock Lesnar was supposed to go into the Rumble as champion and Roman Reigns was perhaps supposed to go into the Rumble. Maybe Roman Reigns is supposed to win the Royal Rumble, which, you know, could be an idea, something that could happen on the night if they want to give us these sort of, you know, shocking moments, twists and turns throughout the night, which you used to get in a lot of those sort of old school sort of Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression style pay-per-views. So we could get that kind of swerving going on at the Rumble. I wouldn't be surprised. But to see things then, would Seth Rollins be the right person to win that title? In a way, I feel it would sort of come out of left field, because it would also make up for Seth Rollins obviously not winning the championship at day one as well, if that was what's meant to be the direction. Of course, Brock Lesnar winning the WWE Championship and entering a Fatal 5-Way, which was supposed to be a Fatal 4-Way. There obviously was a direction that was going to go on for that match originally that got changed. So in a way, it would fix all the corners, but it would feel a bit weird that Roman Reigns would lose his title in that way. The only thing I would say that's good with Seth and what they have done well with this feud, they have reminded us that every time Seth and Roman have faced one-on-one, who has come out the victor? Seth has always had Roman's number. And of course, Roman Reigns right now, the Tribal Chief, has he got too cocky by getting rid of a Paul Heyman? Does he need someone like that by his side? It's benefited Brock so quickly. Do we still get that same story that Roman, without Paul Heyman, isn't the same tribal chief? Is he really the head of the table? And what excitement can we get with Roman Reigns, who is then no longer the Universal Champion, instead chases the WWE Championship going into WrestleMania against Brock Lesnar? And does then that mean that Drew McIntyre still gets that big moment in front of fans that he deserves at a SummerSlam, or even the rumoured UK event that should be happening later on this year? There's so many twists, there's so many questions. To be honest, really, I'm excited whatever happens, but yeah, we'll have to see how it will play out. Supersonic X now with our next question. Do you think Yoshi wrestling fans are going to be upset about Sarray's new character in NXT 2.0? Also, would you prefer Asuka to appear at the end of the Women's Royal Rumble match, or the Becky vs Drew Drop title match at the Royal Rumble? With Asuka, personally, I'd actually say during the Royal Rumble, put her back in the mix there, put her in. I actually did a fantasy booking of the Women's Royal Rumble match, and if Asuka is fit and good to go, which I'm sort of feeling that she may do, I put her in this match, and I think that that's sort of the way to go with her going forward. There's no need for her to make an impact at the end of Becky versus Doudrop because, well, you've got the Royal Rumble match going on that's either before it or later, and that person's going to be the #1 contender that can declare themselves going for the winner of that match. So for Asuka, she could be just standing at the sidelines looking at going, well, probably should have entered the Royal Rumble match. So for me, I think it's the Rumble match is the place that she should be going in. Not at the end of it, I put her in during. Make her get in there and have a nice lengthy run in the Royal Rumble match. Hey, even win it, why not? That'd be pretty cool to see. As for Sarray and the character change, now I can't speak for Yoshi wrestling fans, but I can speak for myself and what I think would be a majority of wrestling fans and say, that gimmick looks like it's not going to work from day one. Sarray for me has not really connected since going to NXT. I don't think she's been booked properly from the entire time. And when I've seen other performers like Asuka and Io Shirai, Kairi Sane, I don't really feel anything stand out about Sarray. I made a big deal that they spent years trying to get her to come to WWE, and I don't understand why at this particular time. Maybe a character change was needed, but this character change almost like, what's it, like a school kind of thing going on? Nah, that does not work for me whatsoever. So for me, I do think that a number of wrestling fans are going to be upset, not just one sort of set of fans, whether it's Yoshi wrestling fans. I think NXT wrestling fans might be upset as well. I think wrestling fans in general might turn and say this gimmick might not work. And let's be fair, NXT 2.0, it's all been about a gimmick. Some have managed to work, some have really not worked. So I suppose time will tell if this one will work out. But for me, on early doors, I don't have high confidence on it. Next question coming from Bama Slammer Wrestling Podcast. If you could go back in time and see one match live in the moment, what match would it be and why? Such a great question, this one. Personally, for me, I love the choice of gift that you got there, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. I must admit, I can't remember if that is the WrestleMania 25 Classic, some argue the greatest wrestling match of all time, or if that was the one where, you know, Shawn Michaels' career was on the line, but certainly both would be very memorable and you'd want to be in attendance for. For me, personally, two matches came immediately to mind. Undertaker versus Mankind from King of the Ring 1998 was one of them, just purely because of the spectacle of Mankind going flying off the top of the Hell in a Cell. And I just remember like being on the edge of my seat and not being able to look anywhere else. I imagine from a live perspective, it would be very frightening to watch, even more than watching at home, because camera angles have a way of making things look like it's part of the show and part of the act. And one thing for me watching it live, which you know, I got a chance to see my first pay-per-view live in the Survivor Series last year, to see all of it live, I do find myself that I was popping more for things that I know I would do sitting on my sofa at home, whether it's the energy of the arena or whether it's the fact that you actually, these moves look like they're a lot more legit when you're seeing them face to face without that sort of, you know, nice little camera angle cut, do you know what I mean, to make it look like it's landed so nicely. But yeah, I think for me, watching that would have been quite frightening, watching it live, seeing Mankind go flying like that. But at the same time, I think definitely would be a special environment. But the one match that I was saying is my ultimate choice is a WrestleMania match, and also features The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in it. It is End of an Era. That's right, the WrestleMania 28 Hell in a Cell match. Undertaker versus Triple H with Shawn Michaels as special guest referee, mainly because it's my favourite match of all time. I love the sports entertainment storytelling throughout the match, the way it took 4 years to build to it, and just the whole match from start to finish was an absolute spectacle. And I do think there was a lot of great reactions from the crowd. And of course, you go from that moment that Shawn Michaels, the referee, will he call it down the middle, sweet chin music to Taker, going into the pedigree, doing the pinfall, the 1, the 2, the way that the place erupted in Florida at that point, I think was very special. You felt that from your TV screen at home. To be there live for that particular moment for me is real standout. So that would be my choice of answer for you here today. But I definitely love to know everyone's in the comments below. Last question this week coming from Jamie Holmes. Do you think Eddie Edwards will turn on Impact Wrestling and join the Ring of Honor Invaders? So far with brawls that have taken place, Eddie hasn't actually gotten physical with any of the ROH guys. Absolutely love this suggestion. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a little bit behind on Impact Wrestling since Hard to Kill, so I can't say I've seen everything that's gone on up to date to this point, but I love the idea and storyline behind it because, you know, Eddie Edwards is Mr. Impact Wrestling to actually be helping the ROH Invaders get involved. And what is the purpose? Is it a new supergroup to take over Impact Wrestling for himself, just take over Impact, and these guys from Ring of Honor have actually signed with the company? Or is he defecting and going to be doing dates and stuff for Ring of Honor when they come back and he's actually turning on Impact Wrestling? Either way, from storyline perspective, it's golden. So I personally would love to see it. Do I think it will happen? I'm not so sure at this stage. Like I say, I'm a little bit out of touch for the last week or two of what's going on in Impact. But if you'd ask me if I think it'd be a cool thing to see, I think it's an awesome storyline idea and certainly could be something that'd be very, very special indeed. Eddie Edwards, if I'm not mistaken, is a former Ring of Honor World Champion as well. So there's certainly history there. At one point where he had loyalty to that company. He certainly had loyalty to Impact Wrestling. To sort of put his loyalties to the test in the middle, that'd be quite fun as well. So yeah, everything from storyline direction here, absolutely love it. For me personally, I can't see Eddie turning on Impact Wrestling, but yeah, I think it's a great idea, Jamie. For fantasy booking wise, I think you definitely nailed something on the head there that I think a lot of people would be interested and keen on seeing. But that's all we've got time for this week on AskSCW. Thank you everyone for your questions. As always, make sure to follow everyone as well on Twitter. Let's grow together in the wrestling community. Make sure to check out other videos as well, as we're now on Royal Rumble week. Plenty of Royal Rumble videos already dropped on the channel, including surprises and potential returns for the Royal Rumble. Fancy booking as well. The Women's Royal Rumble match, that is available on the channel for you right now. And I've got to say, loving the feedback I got from that so far. Thank you everyone that's been saying such kind words. And as well as that, also have done what I think wrestling YouTubers as well. We've all collaborated together who we think will win the Royal Rumble matches for the men and the women this year. That is available on the channel, as well as what is the greatest Royal Rumble match of all time as well. Both of those done in Royal Rumble match formats. Royal Rumble predictions as well will be coming on the channel live this week as well, so make sure to keep an eye out for those. But yeah, pretty much keep an eye on SCW. Lots going on at this particular moment as we go into Royal Rumble season, heading in towards WrestleMania season. But that's all from me anyway. Please like, share, and subscribe as well. Drop a comment in the comment section below. It really does help the growth of the channel. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. Thank you for watching. Check out these videos now. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll see you next time.